Here's what they don't tell you about that private moment between Kody and Aspyn. It was never private at all. Aspyn Brown's quiet retreat from the show hardly qualifies as a mystery. The catalyst was handed to viewers on a silver platter when Kody Brown and his ever-present on-screen confidant decided to film a dinner discussion built around one of his off-camera visits with Christine's children, plus a few he apparently didn't expect to encounter. The real centerpiece, of course, was Aspyn's private conversation with her father, in which she asked the most straightforward question a child can ask a parent. "Why don't you like me?" A moment of emotional vulnerability, never intended for public consumption, was promptly converted into storyline filler and rebranded, thanks to the resident interpreter of all things Kody, as a confrontation. Nothing signals a healthy family dynamic quite like weaponizing a daughter's pain for airtime. It takes little imagination to deduce why Aspyn might have decided she had no further interest in being filmed, especially while preparing to welcome a child. Some parents might find it prudent to keep their newborns off reality television. In this family, that apparently qualifies as radical sanity. Compared to siblings who remain adjacent to the cameras, Aspyn's instinct to opt out reads less like rebellion and more like basic parental competence. The show's younger generation, when they appear at all, function mostly as background scenery, introduced briefly, given no real voice, and promptly ushered off screen. It's arguably the healthiest arrangement available to them in an environment so adept at converting personal hardship into episodic content. One could call it low exposure. Others might call it self-preservation. The production's appetite for disclosure, however, is highly selective. Transparency is encouraged only when it flatters the right people. Viewers have watched for years as private struggles of the original three wives were dissected on camera, while Kody's own vulnerabilities remained strictly off-limits. Attempts to address his issues publicly were shut down with remarkable speed. Meanwhile, his favored partner showed no discomfort offering commentary on everyone else's shortcomings, just so long as the scrutiny never turned toward her. Against this backdrop, it is unsurprising that many of the adult children have stepped back. Their most sensitive moments were routinely mined without hesitation. Isabel's heartbreak before and after surgery became yet another narrative thread, her father's absence framed with all the empathy of a scheduling conflict. What is unfolded is not merely emotional neglect, but sustained abandonment, financial, physical, and reputational. Years of on-camera disparagement were followed by the predictable attempt to rewrite it all as momentary anger not meant to be taken seriously. The apology tour would be more convincing had it not been preceded by 4 seasons of televised contempt. And then came the remark that crystallized everything. Upon hearing Aspyn's question, "Dad, why don't you like me?" The immediate response was to classify it as an act of confrontation. Nothing reveals character quite like labeling a daughter's plea for validation as aggression. It was a moment so revealing, it nearly made the rest of the series redundant. Aspyn has endured more than most, and in return, her sincerity was repackaged as conflict for an audience. The failure to recognize the emotional weight of her question, let alone offer validation, was staggering. Yet the true indictment lies with the father who revealed the conversation at all, transforming a private attempt at healing into yet another plot point. If trust evaporated in that moment, one could hardly blame her. In a family where vulnerability becomes storyline and sincerity becomes confrontation, silence may be the only form of self-protection left. Are you wondering why Robin suddenly looks more trapped than treasured? There is a particular glaze that settles over a person's face once the emotional exit has already occurred. Lately, that sheen has begun to appear on Robyn Brown, who seems to be drifting away from her carefully curated devotion with all the subtlety of a checked-out employee waiting for the clock to strike 5. The detachment is palpable, and the only suspense left is whether she will acknowledge it before or after the cameras stop rolling.
Their on-screen conversations offer no reassurance. Every exchange between Robyn and Kody lands with the stiff, hollow thud of a high school play performed by students who never wanted the roles in the first place. The infamous licking conversation belongs in a museum dedicated to scenes that should never have aired, unless the production secretly hired writers from a surrealist sitcom and forgot to mention it. Unfortunately, the far likelier explanation is that the pair simply improvised their way into yet another moment of televised awkwardness. Their dynamic appears to be pre-negotiated, topics chosen, points assigned, before one participant inevitably fails to stay on script. Robyn's recurring frustration seems less like emotional revelation and more like the weary irritation of someone trapped with a man who communicates with the same precision he dances, chaotically, unintentionally, and everywhere at once. Despite this, neither half of the duo has a track record of enduring unhappiness out of principle. Her past includes financial missteps and strategic partnerships. His includes a loudly stated preference for pleasure over responsibility, a philosophy he illustrated by shedding spouses the moment they became inconvenient. The partnership has always rested on shaky pillars of mutual self-interest rather than self-sacrifice. Yet, the house of cards remains, at least while the filming and finances hold. When those evaporate, the split seems inevitable. The only real mystery is which one will grab their emotional go-bag first. Signs of erosion are already evident. Robyn no longer treats Kody like the prized customer whose satisfaction ensures repeat business. His own complaints about monogamy not being enough suggest that the thrill has dissipated now that there is no competitive arena to heighten his interest. She appears resentful, cornered, and fully aware that she has inherited the least enviable role. The last wife standing beside a man who has publicly run out of charm, cash, and credibility, all while a former co-wife celebrates a bestseller. Compounding the discomfort is her clear distaste for being on camera, coupled with her inability to corral Kody's erratic public persona. The result is not mystery, it is dysfunction wearing a microphone. Outside the show's protective bubble, the prospects are bleak. With few allies, limited options, and a husband whose ramen noodle coiffure now reflects his general disposition, Robyn occupies a life built on choices that have yielded precisely the misery now unfolding for all to see. If detachment is indeed emerging, it is not subtle, and certainly not surprising. It is simply the predictable consequence of a story that has run out of illusion. Are you someone who's wondered why every conflict around Robyn Brown somehow ends with her being the wounded party? Robyn Brown has perfected the art of transforming even the most mundane interaction into a melodrama in which she and her children emerge as the aggrieved innocents. The moment Christine announced her departure, Robyn sprinted home to inform her daughters quite theatrically that Christine no longer wanted a relationship with them. Their stricken faces during the farewell suddenly made sense. They had been carefully primed for heartbreak that never actually existed. Christine's actual words were unremarkable, a simple acknowledgement that she needed space. From this, Robyn constructed an entire opera of rejection. Christine apparently wanted nothing to do with Robyn, her children, her porcelain doll aesthetic, or the museum of paintings adorning the walls. The leap from "I need space" to "she has disowned us all" would be impressive were it not so routine. Victimhood is not merely Robyn's default setting, it is the one storyline she can perform with conviction. And conveniently, it ensures that any possibility of reconciliation between Kody and his other children or wives is snuffed out before it can spark. This pattern is not new. Even Mary's relentless contortions to win Robin's friendship yielded nothing more than polite indifference. If Mary, who treated Robin as though her approval were a prerequisite for breathing, received so little in return, Christine never stood a chance. In Robin's worldview, the original wives are decorative accessories at best, economic stepping stones at worst. Kody may be catastrophically misguided and incapable of accountability, but at least he musters some emotional reaction to the unraveling of his family. Robin, by contrast, displays concern only when the consequences threaten her own stability. The irony of Robin lamenting the loss of a relationship she never allowed to exist is almost too rich. She famously refused to let Christine care for her children and bristled at the idea of the families mingling freely. Even Christine's kids were kept at arm's length. One must wonder what exactly Robin expected Christine to salvage.
At a certain point, the theatrics cross into something darker. Inventing narratives that wound her own children and sever their ties to an already fragile family ecosystem is not merely manipulative, it is destructive. In the end, Robin has managed to alienate nearly everyone, her children most of all, who have now lost connections to both their biological and adopted families. But as long as the story casts her as the misunderstood heroine, the collateral damage seems to be of little concern. Are you trying to figure out why the original children always felt like visitors? The answer is baked into every rule Robin enforced. Robin's language in the latest episode performs a remarkable act of unintentional honesty. The phrase, "I just want enough room for our kids, and one day when your kids," does all the heavy lifting. In a single breath, the family fractures neatly into two categories: the children who belong to her and Kody, and the children who, despite years of shared history, apparently remain visiting dignitaries with no real claim to the household. The subtext doesn't even bother pretending to be subtle. Dayton, Aurora, and Brianna are ours. Everyone else, merely yours. This would be curious in any blended family. It is astonishing in one where these children lived in her home, grew up under her roof, celebrated milestones with her, and were expected to view her as a maternal figure. Yet affection, it seems, flows only in one direction. The role of stepmother is embraced with all the warmth of a bureaucratic policy, technically acknowledged, spiritually rejected. The historical pattern is equally revealing. The home was always her home, reserved primarily for her children. The infamous refrigerator note instructing the other children to request permission for food turns what should have been a communal space into a gated resource. This in a household where financial scarcity was hardly the issue. The idea that children, some of whom struggled with genuine material insecurity in their early lives, should negotiate access to a pantry while their father funded an endless stream of comforts remains one of the more grotesque contradictions of the family's supposed values. Such inequity wasn't confined to the kitchen. Even playtime required clearance. Robin's children enjoyed a landscaped yard. The others were relegated to dirt lots and the privilege of asking permission to cross into greener pastures. The message? Equal in name, separate in practice. Instances accumulate. A child arrives to play, dinner is served. She is briskly sent home rather than offered a plate. The plural family mentality, so often espoused in theory, evaporates when tested by the simplest acts of hospitality. Meanwhile, Kody, champion of unity when it suits him, remains conspicuously silent. Evidently, community living is inspirational rhetoric, not operational policy. Beneath all this lies a quieter conviction, that Robin's children are the superior model, more compliant, more palatable,
more deserving of paternal devotion. The original group of children, once the center of this family experiment, are met with barely concealed disdain. The theology of equality falters quickly when contrasted with the practical distribution of affection, attention, and square footage. Truly, circumstances make that particularly clear. A doll collection enjoys more residential priority than she does. The long-standing pattern is unmistakable. Robin kept her children separate, enforced boundaries around food and presents, outsourced childcare to a rotating cast of nannies, and routinely exempted herself from the shared traditions that defined the family before her arrival. Integration was never her project. Instead, the existing structure was quietly dismantled and rebuilt to accommodate a new hierarchy, one with no rules she did not personally approve. While the other wives contorted themselves to meet Kody's evolving standards, Robin's entrance reset the entire system. The family didn't gain a new member, it acquired a new operating manual. And the fine print of that manual, her language, her rules, her divisions, leaves little ambiguity about who counts, who doesn't, and why the family never had a fighting chance. Stop believing the myth that Mary was the problem. She wasn't, at all. Kody Brown's parenting career contains exactly one shining moment, and it arrived back in the Las Vegas era, when a delayed set of house closing papers threatened to derail Christmas. As Leon unraveled over the inconvenience, Kody delivered a rare dose of grounding, gratitude for a roof, food, and basic stability. Given the family's earlier financial instability, it would hardly be surprising if gratitude had never ranked high on Leon's list of practiced virtues. In that particular scene, Kody managed to channel something resembling responsible fatherhood.
The triumph ended there.
His musings about cringing at Mary's relationship with Leon landed with all the insight of a man who mistakes emotional closeness for dysfunction, simply because he's unfamiliar with the concept. Parent-child dynamics vary wildly. What required reinforcement was not less closeness, but Leon's understanding of privilege, precisely the point he'd made moments earlier. What followed, however, was the show's favorite parlor trick, transforming Mary into the perennial scapegoat. Despite being legally tied to Kody, along with his financial liabilities and whatever credit issues he contributed, she somehow became the designated culprit for the delayed paperwork. This, in spite of 2 decades of evidence showing her as the organized, detail-driven adult in the household, while Kody perfected the art of aimless convertible cruising and mid-conversation phone calls. Misplaced documents fit his track record far more comfortably than hers, yet the public narrative dutifully shifted blame in her direction. Optics always seemed to fall magically in his favor. This pattern is hardly limited to home buying logistics. His version of parenting operates primarily on performance. Well-timed lines, appropriately somber tones, and an unwavering confidence that no one will expect follow-through. The promise of a room for a child he had no intention of accommodating belongs to the same genre, a polished veneer masking an empty interior. Meanwhile, Leon has been saddled for years with the label of spoiled, a charge that wilts under closer inspection. With Kody largely absent, Mary leaned on Leon for emotional and practical support far beyond what should fall on a child. The result was another generation of parentified kids. Logan's experience in one household, Leon's in another, shouldering responsibilities their father strategically sidestepped. The family's mythology may cast Kody as the misunderstood patriarch, but the evidence reads more like a man perpetually crediting himself for virtues he briefly performs and blaming others for failures he quietly engineers. Are you frustrated by how the Brown family's finances keep defying logic and basic arithmetic? The ongoing mythology that Coyote Pass was divided fairly has always relied on a generous suspension of disbelief.
The arrangement grants each party 1/4 of the land, a charming bit of arithmetic that only makes sense if one accepts the fantasy that Kody Brown and Robin Brown operate as two distinct financial beings. They do not. They are, and have long been, a single economic unit, wrapped in a legal marriage certificate and a shared bank account. Under any rational accounting, their combined quarter share quietly becomes a half share, leaving Mary and Janelle with the delightful privilege of receiving half of what the Kody-Robin partnership walks away with. The situation becomes even more absurd when remembering the long trail of debts previously covered by the other wives, debts attached not to a communal project, but to Robin herself. Yet the narrative insists that this grand land division somehow represents justice. Meanwhile, Christine departed with a house, Robin landed a house. The equitable solution would have been simple. Divide Coyote Pass into thirds among the remaining adults, Mary, Janelle, and the ever-spinning financial vortex known as Kody. Instead, the family's business account was conveniently shuttered, its remaining funds absorbed by the same vortex, leaving the others to marvel at the audacity. The contrast is most striking in the real estate saga. Robin and Kody managed to secure a $1 million home, elegantly described as a family asset, while Janelle lived in a trailer. Mary and Janelle had contributed proceeds from their Vegas home sales as the down payment for that so-called family property. Yet the return on their investment seems to have evaporated somewhere between the closing documents and the moving trucks. The simplest, fairest outcome would have been to hand Mary and Janelle the entire property and call it even. Instead, the family continues its long tradition of financial decisions that defy logic, fairness, and, occasionally, gravity. In the end, fair appears to mean whatever leaves Kody and Robin comfortably positioned and everyone else wondering how the math keeps working against them. Are you tired of rooting for reality stars who turn out to be just as messy once the villain leaves the screen? There comes a moment in every long-running reality franchise when the cast stops feeling like familiar companions and starts resembling a collection of cautionary tales. After nearly 2 decades of televised plural marriage, the once beloved figures of this particular saga have reached that point. The early fascination, born of genuine curiosity about an unconventional lifestyle, has curdled into something closer to anthropological fatigue. The charm has evaporated. The overproduction has taken its place. The decline began, unsurprisingly, with the family patriarch, who managed to alienate audiences long before the rest of the cast followed suit. For years, viewers clung to 2 remaining beacons of sympathy, hoping that Janelle and Christine might somehow rise above the dysfunction around them. But as time marched on, and the women finally exited the marital labyrinth, a sobering realization emerged. They were compelling only in contrast to the chaos they escaped. Once freed from that context, they revealed a strikingly ordinary assortment of unresolved issues and unintentionally comedic missteps. Christine's post-escape exuberance swiftly veered into spectacle, while Janelle's entrepreneurial reinventions, particularly the inexplicable coaching ventures, suggested less empowerment and more opportunism. The grift-adjacent sheen has become difficult to ignore. The larger reality television landscape offers no refuge. Once authentic portraits of unconventional families or struggling young parents have metamorphosed into glossy caricatures, propped up by cosmetic surgery budgets and manufactured storylines. What was once a window into unfamiliar worlds has devolved into a bargain bin imitation of the Real Housewives industrial complex. Even this show's later seasons appear stretched thin, as though the producers hoped that repeated aerial shots of Coyote Pass might distract from the absence of meaningful content. In the end, the supposed Super Bowl moment, watching the wives finally leave, offered a brief spark of satisfaction before the narrative sputtered into anticlimax. Now the series plods along with the energy of a social media feed filled with middle-aged divorce drama. Accessible anywhere, compelling nowhere. The central revelation, perhaps, is that sharing a husband for more than 3 decades was never a storyline built to age gracefully. Its aftermath isn't faring much better. The magic is gone, the illusion has collapsed, and what remains is a tableau of former protagonists attempting to monetize their reinvention. The audience's disengagement is not a mystery. It is the inevitable end of a show that long ago exhausted both its novelty and its sincerity. Subscribe.